Hello, amazing English learners, and welcome back to Easy English Tales. Today, we have one of the most incredible stories from the world of business and technology. It's a story about success, failure, and the greatest comeback in history. Imagine you create a company. You build it from nothing in your parents' garage. It becomes your life, your passion. It grows into a famous, successful company known all over the world. Now, imagine that the leaders of that same company fire you. They ask you to leave. What would you do? Would you give up? Would you be angry forever? Or would you try to build something new? And what if, 12 years later, that company you created was dying, and they asked you to come back and save it? This is the true story of Steve Jobs and his company, Apple. Now, this video is specially made to help you improve your English. As you listen to this fascinating story, you will practice your listening skills. We will also learn some new, important words about business and technology. I will explain these words right inside the story, making them easy to remember. By the end of this video, you will not only know this amazing story, but your English will be a little stronger, too. So, to understand the greatest comeback, we must first understand the Great Fall. How did the man who created Apple get fired from his own company? Let's begin. Our story starts in 1976. In a garage in California, two friends named Steve started a company. One was Steve Jobs, and the other was Steve Wozniak. Wozniak was a brilliant engineer who built an amazing new personal computer. But Steve Jobs was the visionary. A visionary is someone who has clear, powerful ideas about what the future should be like. Jobs saw that this computer could change the world. He wanted everyone, not just big companies, to have a computer in their home. They called their new company Apple Computer. Apple grew very, very fast. It became a huge success. But as Apple got bigger, it needed more experienced leaders. So Steve Jobs hired a man named John Sculley to be the CEO, the main boss of the company. Sculley came from Pepsi, a company that sold soda. Jobs famously asked him, "Do you want to sell sugar water for the rest of your life, or do you want to come with me and change the world?" For a while, they worked together, but soon there were problems. Steve Jobs was very passionate and very demanding. He had a big new project, a computer called the Macintosh. He believed it was the future. But the Macintosh was expensive, and at first it did not sell very well. The leaders of the company, including John Sculley, became worried. They had different ideas from Steve about how to run Apple. The disagreements grew bigger and bigger. Finally, in 1985, after a power struggle, the company leaders chose to support John Sculley, not Steve Jobs. They took away all of Steve's responsibilities. In the end, the man who created Apple was forced out of his own company. He was fired. Steve was only 30 years old. He said later that he felt lost, sad, and like a public failure. He had lost the company that was the center of his life. What would he do now? This was the question on everyone's mind. After leaving Apple, Steve Jobs did not stop. He was hurt, but he still had a fire inside him. He decided to start again. He took the lessons he learned and started a new computer company called NeXT. At NeXT, he wanted to build the most perfect computer ever made. The NeXT computer was beautiful. It was a perfect black cube, and it was very powerful and advanced. But it was also extremely expensive. Only universities and big businesses could buy it. NeXT computers never sold very well to regular people. In some ways, NeXT was a business failure, but it was a very important failure. At NeXT, Steve learned how to manage a company from the start, and they created amazing software. This software would become very important later, but would it ever be successful? While he was building NeXT, Steve did something else. He bought a small computer graphics company from the creator of Star Wars, George Lucas. This little company had 10 people. Its name was Pixar. Pixar's goal was to make movies using computers. This is called computer animation. Animation is the art of making drawings or computer images look like they are moving. At first, Pixar did not make much money. Steve Jobs spent millions of dollars of his own money to keep the company alive because he believed in its technology and its creative people. Then, Pixar made a deal with Disney to create the world's first completely computer-animated movie. That movie was Toy Story. When Toy Story came out in 1995, it was a huge success. Everyone loved it. Suddenly, Pixar was a world-famous and very valuable company. Steve Jobs was a success again. He had learned how to work with creative artists and storytellers, not just engineers. But while Steve was learning these new things and having success with Pixar, what was happening back at the company he had created? What was happening at Apple? While Steve was away, Apple was lost. The company was going in many different directions. They made too many products. They made different kinds of computers, printers, and even a camera. It was very confusing for customers. No one knew what Apple stood for anymore. The company that was once exciting and innovative had become boring. Worst of all, Apple was losing a lot of money. Year after year, fewer people bought Apple computers. The company was getting closer and closer to bankruptcy. Bankruptcy is a very serious word in business. It means a company has no more money to pay its bills, and it might have to close forever. By 1997, Apple was in big trouble. Some experts said the company was only 90 days away from running out of money completely. Apple was dying. The leaders at Apple knew they needed a big change. They needed a new plan, a new vision. They needed someone to save them. So they decided to look for help. And in a surprising move, they decided to look to the past. They decided to call the man they had fired 12 years before. They didn't just call Steve Jobs and ask him to come back. In a very clever deal, Apple bought Steve's company, NeXT, for over $400 million. By buying NeXT, they got its amazing software, and they also got its founder, Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs was back at Apple. He was not the CEO at first. He was just an advisor. But everyone knew he was really there to lead. The big question was, could he do it? Could one man save a company that was so close to failure? When Steve Jobs returned to Apple, he saw that the problem was even worse than he thought. The company had no focus. Focus is when you concentrate all your energy and attention on one or a few important things. Apple was trying to do too many things at once, and it was doing none of them well. One of the first things he did was hold a big meeting with Apple's employees. He stood on stage in simple shorts and sneakers and asked them, "What's wrong with this place?" He then showed them all the different products Apple was making. He said, "This is crazy." He then made a very hard decision. He canceled about 70% of Apple's products. He stopped making printers. He stopped making many different models of computers. Many people lost their jobs. It was very painful. But Steve knew it was necessary. He said Apple would focus on making just 4 great computers, 2 for regular people and 2 for professionals. That's it. Next, he needed to bring back the spirit, the soul of Apple. He wanted to remind the world and Apple's own employees what Apple was all about. So, he started a famous advertising campaign called Think Different. The ads did not show any computers. Instead, they showed black and white pictures of creative and important people from history, like Albert Einstein, Mahatma Gandhi, and Martin Luther King Jr. The message was clear. Apple was not for everybody. Apple was for the creative people, the rebels, the troublemakers, the ones who wanted to change the world. The campaign was a huge success. People started to believe in Apple again. Now that he had saved the company from dying, he needed to create a hit product. He needed to show the world that the new Apple could still make amazing things. What would that product be? In 1998, Steve Jobs stood on a stage and introduced the world to the iMac. It was a computer that looked like nothing else. It was not a boring beige box. It was a beautiful, all-in-one machine made of colorful, see-through plastic. It was fun, it was simple, and it was designed for the new world of the Internet. The iMac was a huge hit. It sold millions. It was a symbol that Apple was back. It was cool again. After the iMac, Steve and his team looked at another area, music. At that time, people were listening to digital music on MP3 players. But these players were small, ugly, and difficult to use. Steve saw an opportunity. He had a simple, powerful idea: 1,000 songs in your pocket. In 2001, Apple introduced the iPod. It was small, beautiful, and incredibly easy to use. Together with the iTunes software, it made buying and listening to music simple and fun. The iPod was a revolution. A revolution is a very big and sudden change in the way people do things. The iPod revolutionized the entire music industry. Apple was not just a computer company anymore. It was becoming something much bigger. The iPod was a massive success. The company was now stronger and more profitable than ever before. But Steve Jobs was not finished. He had one more secret: a project that was even bigger, more ambitious, and more world-changing than the Macintosh, the iMac, or the iPod. What was this secret project? For years, Steve and his team had been looking at mobile phones. At that time, in the mid-2000s, there were smartphones, but they weren't very smart. They were hard to use, they had small plastic keyboards, and the internet on them was slow and difficult. Steve knew they could do better. He wanted to put a real computer, a powerful computer, into a beautiful, small device that you could hold in your hand. On January 9, 2007, Steve Jobs walked onto a stage to give one of the most famous presentations in history. He said, "Today, we are going to introduce 3 revolutionary products." He said the first was a widescreen iPod with touch controls. The second was a revolutionary mobile phone. And the third was a breakthrough internet communications device. An iPod, a phone, an internet device. He repeated the words again and again. The audience was excited. Then he delivered the big surprise. Are you getting it? These are not 3 separate devices. This is one device, and we are calling it iPhone. When he showed the iPhone, the world was amazed. It had a big, beautiful screen. It had no physical keyboard. You used your fingers to touch the screen. The internet worked like a real computer. It was beautiful. It was simple. It was years ahead of any other phone. The iPhone was not just a new product. It was the ultimate product of Steve Jobs' entire life. It had the design and simplicity he loved, the powerful software from his time at NeXT, and the entertainment and user-friendliness he understood from the iPod and Pixar. It was the ultimate comeback product. The company he was fired from was now the most innovative and exciting company in the world, all because he had returned. Steve Jobs' return to Apple is more than just a business story. It's a story about resilience. Resilience is the ability to become strong, happy, or successful again after something difficult or bad has happened. Steve was fired, but he came back stronger. His story teaches us that failure is not the end. Sometimes it can be a new beginning. He said his time away from Apple helped him to be more creative and to learn new things. His story teaches us the power of focus, of believing in your ideas, and of having a passion for making wonderful things. Steve Jobs passed away in 2011, but his vision and his legacy live on. The company he saved from bankruptcy is now one of the most valuable and influential companies on Earth. Every time you see someone use an iPhone, you are seeing the result of the greatest comeback in business history. What an incredible journey of failure and triumph. Steve Jobs showed the world that even after the biggest fall, you can get up and change the world. What part of his comeback story did you find most inspiring? Was it the creation of Pixar, the Think Different campaign, or the invention of the iPhone? Please share your thoughts with us in the comments below. We truly hope you enjoyed this story and that it helped you with your English learning. If it did, please show your support for our channel by giving this video a big thumbs up. And most importantly, don't forget to subscribe to Easy English Tales and click the notification bell so you won't miss our next story. Thank you so much for watching. Keep practicing, keep learning, and see you next time.